Hello there and welcome. I'm Ole Brøgger, and if you're new here, I really hope I'll earn your subscription today. This is part 4 of the fantasy airship build, and if you haven't watched the last 3 parts, you should go check them up here. I started a bit ahead, so I already painted the controls for the wings, and I also improved it. I'll show you how it works a bit later. But the primary goal in this part is to put in some more details and of course some paint. So we got a lot to do. Let's get started. I gave the mechanics some more stability and glued them in better, and also gave it some more paint. All the levers and pull arms were a bit wobbly, so I put in some brackets that had a diameter that was a bit tighter than the holes in the whole setup. And it increased the stability and everything is running more smooth. All this is my laser cut parts that I have made during this build. Some of it is going to be used and others are not. But right now I'm going to find a couple of levers so we can open and close that bay hatch. And they were pretty easy to add with some super glue. It will make it a lot easier to open and close the bay hatches. Let's trim off the access and we have a couple of levers. Now I just need to do the same thing for the hatches to the crew. Cutting off the access, smooth everything out with my rotary tool, and they work as well. I've made a lot of laser cut parts like these railings, and they will go all around the ship. But I think it's easier if I just prime them first because I want to introduce some color to this ship and not only wood. I started to thread all the railing parts and then I will go to my workshop and give it some spray primer. I have this Hydra turquoise primer from the army painter. I actually used it for the roof on my temple build, and this color will be perfect for the railings. I also laser cut some cardstock that I can glue on top of the doors just to give them some texture. And the stairs I will paint by hand. They will have some strong tone wash. The hole I made in the door handles were perfect fit for some meat needles, and it would make it a lot easier for me to hold them when spraying. And while I was waiting for everything to dry, I had designed this landing bridge that we're going to need and some new windows. I also made a design for some wings. I want the wings to be kind of dragon-like. They will be made out of 3 layers, 2 laser cut parts and some cloth in between. I also cut out a rudder and I 3D printed some brackets where I can mount it to the whole mechanical system. I want a collapsible and retractable landing bridge, so I went overboard again and made a new design. But we're not gonna assemble that yet. I am gonna have focus on the windows. I did not like the previous installed windows, so I came up with a new design that is actually 3 layers that I will glue a window and 2 frames together. But first I will paint the windows with some Talos bronze. And the window frames will have the Hydra turquoise. It will match all the railings then. The wings and rudder, they will be hit with some dark wood speed paint. I want a glass effect in the windows, so I started to fill them up with some UV resin. I put them on a piece of packaging tape and then I could hit them with some UV light from below. I found out this is the most effective way to avoid bubbles. I will give the doors some dark tone wash just to give it some more shadow effect. The window frames will get the same treatment and so will the gun bay doors. Before I install any more details like the railings and other stuff, I will paint all the parts that is already installed. I think this will be a lot easier because there will be no other things in the way. And then it hit me, maybe I should have painted all these parts before I glued them in. But now they are, and I will just have to spend some extra time and be a bit more careful painting all these golden lines along the edges. And now I'm actually glad that I didn't glue in these gun ports. It is a lot easier to handle, and then I can glue them in when they are painted. I used this turquoise siren to highlight all the parts. It's a bit brighter tone, and I just dry brushed it on, and that is very effectful and good enough. The cargo bay doors and the crew hatches also got some dark tone wash. And now when I was going to assemble the window frames, I really didn't like the look of this UV resin that I put in the windows. So I decided, okay, maybe I will just skip the resin part and paint some of the leftover windows that I had in a gold color. And I did the same thing for the big round window for the galley. The cargo bay doors were now ready to get some dry brushing with the turquoise siren. The gold in the windows were dry, and I could attach the frames with some PVA glue. I also needed to paint some spots that were missed in the priming of the railings, and I just did a touch-up. And the round window would get a turquoise edge as well. There is so much area on the railings, so I decided to use this quick shade dark tone instead of using my expensive Fanatic washes. The color should be the same, and I think this is okay. I never dip any miniatures in this stuff anyway, but it's a very good shade. I've planned that I will cut up the railing in sections so it is easier around the corners and some of the curves. And for that I found some beads in a nice size. I also have these Q-tips, but they were a bit too thick to fit in the hole on the beads. I had to grind some of it down. And then I can attach the bead on the top and start to produce a whole lot of these spacers. I will attach the bead with some PVA glue and set them to dry. I smooth out the excess glue with a wet brush. Well, I could not leave the thought about not having glass in these windows, so I tried to sand down one of the windows and see if I could make them more transparent. But it didn't work as I thought it would. And then I took one of my new windows, and I have this UV putty from Green Stuff World. I thought maybe I had better control, at least there's no bubbles, but I was a bit insecure of how transparent these windows would be. I thought might as well give it a shot. But it didn't work either. They were lumpy and not even as transparent as the UV resin ones. And then I got a new idea. I cut out some new windows. I thought maybe Vaseline instead of using tape. I put some Vaseline directly on my silicone mat. And that should secure that I don't get a spill when I'm putting in some Vallejo water effect. It will take longer to dry, but these can just stay overnight and they should be ready in the morning. Let's go back and have a look at the spacers for the railings. I found out that I needed a lot more of these, and the hole in top of the bead was still visible. Using the PVA glue, it just shrunk too much and the hole could still be seen. I know this Green Stuff World putty is very good for that kind of tasks, and I just splashed it on them all and smoothed it out with a wet brush. I let them set for an hour, and then I could use my rotary tool to smooth it out, and I had a perfect ball in the top of a stick. I also need to paint these, and I didn't want to have paint on my pinboard, so I took a piece of paper from my wet palette, holding it down with some meat needles, and then I could poke some holes and put all the pins with balls in the top or beads in the top and give them some paint. I started out giving them some black primer, then some oak brown airbrush paint. Brown is always a good choice as a base if you're going to paint some gold metallic on top of it. And gold is exactly what I'm gonna do. I'll be using some glittering loot speed paint from the Army Painter. These metallic paints just go so smooth through the airbrush without clogging up. These are the first of my windows. This is with the UV resin, and I don't like the result, too blurry. And the same goes for The UV putty from Green Stuff World. It is quite effective, but not for windows. However, these have been sitting overnight, and I am quite happy with the result. They are very transparent, and this water effect from Vallejo, it just did the job. Now I just need to mount a couple of frames. And this time I'm not in a hurry, so I'll just use PVA glue and let them set for a couple of hours before I mount them in the ship. I'll just have to carefully cut out the old windows, clean up the frame, add some PVA glue, and put in the new window. I made the new window slightly larger than the old one, so I would still have a press fit for them, and they will be nice and tight. I also mounted the big round window for the galley. I think the window itself is a bit thin, so I think I will make a frame and add it later. The gun ports are also glued in with some PVA glue, but I also cut out a couple of handles and added it. It will be a lot easier to open and close them. We also need to install a couple of doors, but first we need to add some door handles. I found these small eye hooks from a jewelry kit. I think I can do something different. I have used these for door handles before, but they didn't really look like door handles. This time I will crank it open and push it through the hole in the door. Flip it around and snap off the axis. And then I think we have something that will look like a door handle. I thought I had the ultimate measurements correct, but I was wrong. I had to grind down something, and I needed to drill a hole so the hinge would fit in the bottom of the door. Some super glue on the edge of the door and attach it to the hinge. Now I got a new challenge. The door frame, it's a bit too narrow, so I think I'll have to cut it off because the door won't open fully. For now, I'll just do a couple of touch-up with paint, and then I will have to design a wider door frame and attach it, because I can see this will be a problem on all my doors. The paint did a lot, and now I can actually open the door, but I will still need to figure out that door frame. I think the brown color on the door frame looks a bit weird. It doesn't match the color scheme of the rest of the boat. So I decided that all the door frames will also have the turquoise color. I've installed all the rest of the doors. Now I just need to install my new designed door frame, and they will fit and the door can open and close. Stupid me, why didn't I paint them before I glued them in? Now it's more difficult to paint, but that's how it is when you try to do something in a hurry. Mostly I learned by my mistakes, and this time I actually did, so I painted these window frames for the big round window before I'm gluing it in. And now I need to glue in the stairs, and I think I'll just let them hang in the middle of the room so they will fit the hatches above. I'll just glue them in directly to the floor. I don't think they will need any supports, but let's see what happens, and I can always add supports later. I had to snap the top off the stairs because they were a bit too tall, so the top deck wouldn't fit. It was the same thing for the stairs in the front castle. Let's put some skin on these wings. This is the protective wrapping of a laptop. When you buy a new laptop, it could be covered in this when you're unboxing it. It is a paper-like cloth. It is very thin and flexible and a bit stretchy. I will roughly cut up the sizes that would fit the wings. I put some PVA glue in a cup, and then I added some bony matter speed paint. And this actually looks pretty cool when the paint hits the glue. I mixed it up with a coffee stir stick and put in the cloth. One part of the wing on each side of the cloth. And now this is soaked into PVA glue. It should actually just stick to it. Just to make sure it wouldn't slide off, I added a couple of drops of super glue. I trimmed it a bit more and let it set for the night. This actually turned out better than I have expected. Now they have dried overnight, I just need to trim everything down, give it the right shape. And I just did this freehand with an X-Acto knife. I also sanded all the edges to give it a more round shape. I'll just press fit the 3D printed brackets and then I will give them some base coat with a brush-on primer. And while the brush-on primer dries, I might as well paint the rest of the wings where I sanded them down. And the brush-on primer dries up pretty fast, so I could give it some true copper. I also need to install the last hatch, and I based it on the same design as I did on the frame for the control levers. I just gave it some super glue and put it in place, and finalized it with some dark tone wash. I also needed to assemble the drawbridge, and everything went smooth in the beginning. It assembled perfect and I had the effect that I expected, but attaching it to the ship, that was a bit more complicated. I had some challenges attaching the small hinges to the foam parts of the ship, so I had to make another bracket and attach that. But in the end, everything worked out. I painted in the same color scheme as the rest of the movable parts on the ship, hydra turquoise and gold. The top hatch on the front castle was also getting some turquoise and gold. We also need that railing on the ship, and I started with the front castle top deck. I started to lay out where I'm going to put the sticks with the ball on the top. And I found out if I did as I planned, I wouldn't have enough. So I had to reduce the number between the railing parts. I didn't want to make more of these because they take quite a while to make. I've cut the railing to the right length and attached the spacer with some super glue. And then we have the first part of the railings ready to be attached. I used super glue again because I need to speed up the process. I'm actually in a bit of a hurry. I need to release this video today where I'm editing it, and this was filmed yesterday. I spent 3.5 hours adjusting and installing all these railings, so it took a bit longer than I have expected. But it was worth it, and it turned out even better than I thought it would. I really love the look of this. Final step for today's video, installing the rudder. I used some super glue again. Installing the wings the same way. And now I just need to test that everything works. I'm finally done with this part of the ship. And this railing, it took a lot of time to install. I spent a lot of hours during different nights and weekends over a month just to get this done. I had a lot of other projects in the meanwhile, as the botanic house and other stuff that I needed for my campaign to move on. I'm very happy about how that turned out. And this won't be introduced in the campaign until, in the future sometime. It had to be put on standby. But now we got this far and I need to build that blimp. There's still a lot of stuff to do on this ship, but the minor details, they're done. This is it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and if you already haven't done it, hit that subscribe button up here. Leave a comment below, give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down if you don't like what you see. We are going to have a look at some Heroes of Might and Magic miniatures in the next video, and I'm very excited to tell you more about that. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.